Oh. Oh. Hariom, and greetings from Chantilly, Virginia. Maybe Cleveland, maybe Washington, D.C., who knows? In Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna shares with Rishi Uddhava how Rishi Uddhava can be more like Sri Krishna. He gives him a system on how this can happen. He shares, as you associate, so you think. As you think, so you develop. Associate, think, develop. And then he's specific about ways that Rishi Uddhava can tend to his associations. And one of the ways is to be careful with the people you associate with, because they will affect how you think, and that will affect how you develop. Sharing all of this to be clear about the importance of our mentorship sangha. Our mentorship sangha is us being careful with whom we're associated, to not have casual relationships, but rather to have meaningful relationships. And I believe right now the Wi-Fi is not great. And as long as you can hear me, that's fine. Now, one more thought before I empower our team to continue. In 2009, I was at Chinmaya Vibhuti with Puja Swami Tejo Mayanandara. And he was speaking to a large group of Balavihar administrators and teachers, those who are attending to our kids program in our Chinmaya Mission Centers. And he had shared with everyone, how do you know if you are a good Balavihar teacher? In our case, how do you know if you're a successful mentor, mentee? How would you answer this question? This is what we're going to focus on in our workshop today, measuring mentorship. So please share in the chat, how would you answer Puja Swami Tejomayananda's question about how do you know if you're a successful Balavihar teacher? I'm going to wait for you to share some insights in the chat. If the students are happier, it's a fine response. If everyone is more reflective, also fine response. Good. What Puja Swami Tejomayananda shared is if your students have a greater love for Bhagwan. That was his answer. And so if I can translate that into more practical English, a measure for mentorship is if the mentor and the mentee are more interested, are more committed to self-development. If you as a mentor are more interested and committed to becoming a better person, then you are a successful mentor. If you're a mentee and you're feeling the same, then that's a successful relationship. Being interested, being committed into self-development. Again, as you associate, so you think, so you develop. Our mentorship sangha is to be careful with our associations. In our associations, how do we know what success is? When everyone's moving towards self-development. My appreciation to all for being patient with me trying to teach in the car right now. And so I'm going to pause here and our team will continue.
Hariom Vivekji and Hariom everyone. My name is Sheetal, and under the guidance of Vivekji, I've been a coordinator with the Mentorship Sangha for the past 2.5 years. A couple of nights ago, I had a small gathering in my home, and a friend was sharing her experience of moving from British Columbia to Ontario for residency. And she shared her experience of how challenging this move had been. She shared that despite being so emotionally and financially supported by her family and her partner, because she did not feel a sense of community in her new home, she felt really depressed and isolated. As I gave her some information about our mentorship sangha, I realized how bhagya I was and how bhagya we are for being a part of a program that is rooted in community and deep thinking. And after interacting with many of you at the recent CHISC retreat in Virginia, I was moved by how transformative this Sangha has been. And this has really only been possible because of the commitment that each and every one of you has made to meet consistently and to be a part of these workshops. So thank you. And now, just to share an analysis of the feedback that many of you shared in the mid-year program, in the mid-year survey, I would like to pass it on to Prem. Thank you.
Hariom Sheetal, Hariom Vivekji, Hariom everyone. Thank you all for joining. Welcome to our Silence Retreaters. So I'm going to start off by sharing a bit of the feedback that we received from the mid-year check-in. So I'll pull up my screen. Okay, can folks see the screen and hear me clearly? Perfect. All right, so firstly, thank you to everyone who filled this out. We had around 38 respondents, half of which were mentees and half were mentors. Some high-level statistics. So overall experience in the mentorship sangha was given an 8.6 out of 10, and the depth of interactions were a 7.9 out of 10. So these are really solid stats. We're really happy to see that folks are still finding a lot of value in this and having deeper conversations. We also had a question in there about if your score was sort of 6 or below for depth of interactions, what do you think you can do? And it seemed like that was really the case for newer matches. And so give it some time, and hopefully these workshops also provide with good fodder to have some meaningful interactions. And then some quotes on the side you can read here as well about some of the reflections our community had. So I wanted to first share what everyone is up to, because sometimes our team wonders, like, hey, what do you guys actually do during these calls? You meet so frequently, we don't really have any a line of sight into this. And what are you guys up to? And so we've seen some really awesome responses. I don't know about the rest of the team, but I'm planning to steal half of these. So we've seen that there are some folks who are watching like these online videos and doing some drawing exercises together to try and recreate the output. We found quite a few people are reading books together that have either come from the media list that we uploaded on our website or from their own research as well. And that's a really cool way. I've done a very similar thing with my mentee of having a common shared experience that you can talk through. Someone's watching Harry Potter movies together and trying to find life lessons in this. As a big Potter fan, I haven't thought of using it as that for that, but I'd love to share what some of those lessons are. So the survey was anonymous, so I'm unable to call on this genius, but if they wish to reveal themselves and share some of the lessons, that's always welcome. You're welcome to do a wellness workshop about it as well. I think that'd be an awesome topic. Moving to the right. So one really practical thing, which I appreciate, is a few mentors and mentees are setting very tangible goals that they then try to accomplish by the next meeting. So short 2 to 3 week goals that you're able to do so you can keep each other accountable and kind of score each other on how you did. I think this is a really cool way to just have an accountability buddy for your sadhanas. And that works in both directions. My mentee makes sure to check on me to see if I'm doing my japa every day, if I'm doing my introspection, my journaling. Quite a few folks attend our CHISC DC retreat together, which was awesome. and quite a few folks are joining meaningful mornings together daily. So we also got a lot of cool feedback for improvement, and that's where I want to spend a bit more time. So we got feedback both on the workshops as well as more general things related to our community. So let me start on the workshops on the left. So what I'll do is share what some of our proposed changes are as a result of the feedback that we got. So a lot of feedback was there around the recordings. We know this year we haven't been releasing the recordings immediately after, as a way to encourage people to join live, because there's nothing quite like the live experience where you can ask questions. Having said that, we understand that this content's quite valuable, and we want to give people the opportunity, if they really can't make it, to listen in. And so what we're planning to do is release the recordings of the workshops 3 months after the workshop. So at the end of the summer, we're going to do a batch release of all of the workshops that were at the beginning of the year. And then going forward, 3 months after, you'll be able to access the workshops. So that will allow you to access the content, but hopefully still encourage you to attend in the live. Another thing that we got was people love the Q&A. And so scheduling more time for Q&A during the workshops, that's something we're going to integrate in the next few. More dynamic. So aside from breakout rooms, are we able to do live exercises during the workshops? You know, at a minimum, folks pausing to write things down and kind of giving people a space to reflect, not just in a group setting. So planning to add that as well. Another cool thing that someone requested, which we're definitely going to act on, is wanting to use the workshop material to facilitate discussions with in their pair. And so the way we're going to try and help with that is by sending out a list of discussion questions afterwards. So if you attended a workshop on, I don't know, anxiety or something, we would then send a list of questions that you could discuss with your mentee or your mentor. And that can hopefully be like a cool way to discuss the workshop and go a little deeper. A few topics. We got a lot of topics from everyone that filled out the survey, so thank you for that. A few that we're planning to prioritize in the near term. So one about sort of building or deepening relationships and building more authentic connections. There was an interest in having a panel of how different seekers are applying Vedanta in their lives. We all listen to the same messages, but what do we actually take, and what impact does that have on our lives? And so that will be a panel that we'll run. One about family conflict and one about building confidence. So that was on the workshop side of things. Let's move on to the community side of things. So one thing that we're planning to do in response to the feedback that we got is host some virtual dinners by pod. So this is a really cool opportunity for you to just drop in and meet other members from our Sangha, because we have such an awesome community here of really dedicated people who come from really interesting backgrounds. And so to give you all an opportunity to meet outside of these workshops too, we're planning to throw out a sign-up sheet, which you can just put your name on, and then it will be a very casual virtual dinner that you can have with folks. And similarly, we're planning to do a similar thing to allow folks from different pods to meet each other, whether that's through further dinners or through one-on-ones where we're hashing out the details there. But hopefully both of these initiatives give an opportunity for our Sangha to get closer. And then the final couple of things, one which we're about to turn to is sharing some mentorship best practices. There was a few asks about, hey, how do I know if I'm becoming a good mentor? How do I know if I'm on track? And that's what this workshop, it will be largely about. And then hopefully we can have some conversations in the future too. And then the final thing I'll mention is we kicked off our annual mentorship Sangha retreat this year with the CHISC DC retreat. So we're going to make this an annual event because it was awesome. Like, it was really fun to hang out with my mentee for the first time in person, to be able to hang out with all of our team members too for the first time, and to be able to just commune as a Sangha. And so we're going to make sure to do this every single year. So we hope to have as many people joining as possible. Stay tuned for those details as they come. The final thing I'll share is, if you have any other feedback that was not part of this, or if you felt, if you didn't have time to fill out the survey, do reach out to us at any time. You can either put things in the chat now, or you have our email address, just email us. We're more than happy to make this Sangha as good as it can be for all of you. So that's all from me. I
can go ahead and introduce Vinay. Thanks, Prem. That was awesome. Love to hear your synthesis of all the survey results. It's cool to see Prem's in the management consulting world, so just to see how his work experience and skills kind of play out in this world as well. Awesome. So I have the great honor of introducing Vinay, who I've known for many years through various CHIC activities and retreats. And we even went to India together in the second batch of for the Yatra, and that was amazing. So a little bit about Vinay. He's a Chinmaya Setukari from the Chinmaya Mission Maryland Center. He's an experienced professional educator, having taught high school science in DC and the 11th and 12th grade Bal Vihar class in the Maryland Center for many years. And he's also been involved in the creation of various Bal Vihar curriculum, including life lessons. And if you don't know life lessons, it's amazing curriculum for high schoolers, for them to learn Vedanta in a very hands-on way. Highly recommend it for anyone who's teaching on our call. And currently, Vinay is working towards his doctorate from the University of Pennsylvania, where he conducts research within the field of education. And we were really excited to have Vinay because he has a lot of experience working with mentors and mentees. So we thought it'd be great to hear some of his best practices and tips and kind of learn what's best in terms of mentor-mentee design, relationship design out in the world. So with that, I'll hand it over to Vinay.
Thank you, Pooja. Hariom, everyone. Hariom Vivekji. It's so wonderful to be here with you all this evening. And I'm so excited to talk about mentorship because I have felt in my own life and seen in the lives of many that I've interacted with that there are few things as powerful as a good mentorship relationship for both parties, right? And I think it is so wonderful that the Sangha is able to come together and really focus on providing this. It's so crucial. Let me just share my screen. And so, before I get into sort of my content, so to speak, just a few overarching principles about the way that I generally think about things. Firstly, as Pooja said, and I just want to highlight again, my perspectives on mentorship have been shaped by many different forces, as I think everyone's generally has. For me, it's been mentorship in my own life, right? Growing up, there were people who I was lucky to have mentor me, from when I was a teenager onwards, right? And then, when I became a professional teacher, right, whether I wanted to or not, all of a sudden I was very, very responsible, like contractually responsible for mentoring, different groups of high schoolers each and every year. And then there's mentorship in the Bal Vihar context. And what I'm trying to get at is that all of these contexts are very, very different ones. But what I've seen that I think is so amazing and so interesting is that there are certain commonalities, certain common principles that regardless of your context, right, whether it's in a professional school, whether it's in the Sangha, whether you're a Bal Vihar teacher, whatever it might be, I really do feel that there are certain principles and contexts, certain principles and philosophies and practices that are really applicable despite what your situation is. So that's my sort of first very broad point. My second broad point is that I don't know how many of you are in jobs where they often bring in, outside experts or outside consultants, right, who just talk at you for, 15, 20 minutes, maybe an hour, and presuppose that you don't know anything about what they're talking about, right? I am not a fan of that. My guiding philosophy is that expertise resides in each and every one of us, right? All of you are mentors or mentees, right? And you have that expertise of experience. And so everything that I'm presenting today, please try and take it as an idea that can augment what you're already doing well, right? And if something resonates, take it. Right? If you're not sure about something, try it. And if I present something, an idea that just doesn't flat out work, I hope that's not the case, but I think it's okay to disregard it, right? Because at the end of the day, one of the points I'll make later is that mentorship is so highly personal that it has to be really tailored to both the individuals. So please just keep this in mind, that the ideas I'm presenting, they are what I consider to be authoritative for my own experience, right? But by no means does that mean that you have to take them and apply them in a one-to-one way, if that makes sense. So with that theme of sort of expertise already resides in all of us, the first thing I want us to do is, if you're a mentor, please put one word or phrase in the chat that represents how you think about good mentorship. It doesn't need to be a fully articulated definition, just one aspect, right, of good mentorship. And again, it could be mentorship from any phase of your life. So I want to see some stuff in the chat. Let's see. Give people a minute. These are awesome. So just some common themes. I see selfless, I see listening is coming up a lot, being available, being curious, sharing insights. These are all excellent. These are all excellent. I totally agree. And now, because we have mentees here as well, right, we can't forget about the other half. If you're a mentee, I want you to put one word or phrase in the chat that represents how you think about good mentorship. What does good mentorship feel like to you if you're a mentee? Walk the talk. I love that. Reliability, empathy, honesty. Give people another few seconds. Excuse me. Yeah, these are great. And see, we already know, I think in our heart of hearts, we know instinctively when mentorship is meeting one's needs or not. I think what is hard, right, is amidst everything else going on in life, it can be really hard to be able to take that temperature sometimes. It can be hard to remember to do that, or even if you're giving time to do that, it can be hard to do it in the moment. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to present 3 principles. By no means, again, are these exhaustive, but three principles that I think are crucial to good mentorship. Yes, and these will be focused for the mentors. And then at the end, I have a few smaller principles and questions for mentees to ask themselves about how they can engage in mentorship of themselves more fully. The reason I'm focusing more on the mentor is not just because that's my sort of professional area, but also because I have found that I would say most of the time, the mentor is the one who, at least initially, is driving this relationship forward, right? There are, of course, exceptions. If the mentee is super motivated and is just so into it, and those are the best scenarios, if it's like that. But those are also the rarer ones. Most of the time, I found that the mentor needs to do a little more of the active work. So I'm focusing more on what I think the mentor should do, but I will address both. Okay. So first, my guiding idea of how I would define mentorship, I would define mentorship as a co-constructed relationship, a constant source of guidance and inspiration to the mentee, and an avenue for the mentor to engage in greater selflessness. So there are 3 pieces to that, right? The relationship itself has to be co-constructed. Both parties have to be bought in and working towards it. The mentee should be able to derive guidance and inspiration and so many other good things, right? If I listed them all, this entire slide would be full of that. And the mentor gets the opportunity to engage in greater selflessness. And as I was saying, I think in order to be a good mentor, it means constantly introspecting and asking yourselves the right questions. And in order to be a good mentee, you have to make yourselves available to be mentored, right? And both of those are so vitally important. So again, 3 principles that I'm presenting. The first is that I hold that good mentorship is authentic. And the guiding question, right? Mentors, if you remember nothing else from what I'm saying, I hope that you'll remember the italicized questions that I put up here. The guiding question for authenticity is, how do I adjust myself to be responsive to my mentee's needs while still being true to who I am? Mentorship has to be sincere, meaning that it has to come from you. You can't pretend to be someone you're not. Someone put in the chat, right? A good mentor walks the talk, right? So we have to actually walk that talk. We actually have to be who we are, and that of course requires some introspection. Good mentorship is also personalized, right? We have to do the work of understanding who the mentee is, and we can't just come into that relationship saying, this is who I am, and I fit within this box, and if my mentee doesn't fit within that box, well, then I'm going to try and force it. It won't work that way, right? We have to dig harder and dig deeper into ourselves and learn more about our mentee and try and really figure out, okay, where are those points of connection, right? And I like to think of this as a mutual adjustment, right? For me, I'll give an example. I'm a big sports fan. I'm a big video gamer, right? So those are often 2 points that I would use to try and make connections with my high school students, right? If nothing else was clicking, right? So use your own interests, right? Show yourself as a whole person, right? And I guarantee that there will always be some point of connection. And if you don't feel it's there, again, I really feel that the answer is to keep trying and keep trying to think out of your own box. Yeah, that's a first principle. Good mentorship should be authentic. Second is that good mentorship is responsive, and you'll see the most here because I think this is the most important one. And the guiding questions for being responsive is, what do I need to learn about my mentee to best support them? What is my mentee trying to tell me, both explicitly and implicitly? And again, sort of as a summation, what does my mentee need from me? Mentors, your job is to be there fully for the mentee, for the wholeness of the mentee's person, right? If they're having issues with school, well, you need to remember how, what worked for you in school, right? If they're having issues with their siblings, right, you need to remember how, how you work things out with your siblings, right? And you need to be able to center them in every interaction, right? And that doesn't mean you need to fully talk about them, but it just means that whatever you're saying or doing has to be with them in mind, right? Even if you're talking about yourself, also, especially if you're talking about yourself, it should be with the purpose of, I'm talking about myself, I'm sharing about myself, I'm connecting from myself for the certain purpose to help them in whatever way. The other point here, and I don't think this applies in our community, I really don't think so. I'm just saying it because I have seen it in other contexts, is never taking mentorship lightly. It is such a sacred opportunity, such a sacred relationship. I think of my mentors, Vivekji is one of them. I met Vivekji when I was 15 years old, right? And now I'm 31 next month, right? So that's a 16-year relationship, which I've always been able to draw on for so many things in life, right? It has truly shaped me. And Vivekji never takes his mentorship lightly, right? And I think all of us who know Vivekji, we can agree with that, right? So never take it lightly and always just be asking yourself these questions, right? What does my mentee need? It could be as simple as my mentee just needs to have a chill conversation and hang out and not really think about anything complex. That is as valuable as having a deep, crazy conversation about life. Those two things are equally valuable if they're responding to what your mentee needs. The last principle, and I think this is the more tangible, the more tactile one, is good mentorship is regular. And the question here is, how can I go above and beyond to strengthen my relationship with my mentee? And truthfully, if you're already doing the previous two things, you'll already be in a good position. But good mentorship requires regular contact, right? And so there are so many different touch points, and I love seeing the survey results because I think people are already doing this, right? So you didn't need anyone to tell you, figuring it out naturally. But utilizing different, what I call intensities of communication, is a great way to make mentorship more regular, right? I think sometimes we might tend to fall into the trap of thinking that mentorship means, a half-hour conversation a week, right? Or an hour every 2 weeks, right? And some fixed parameters. And certainly I think that needs to be there. And that's what I would call the less frequent, more formal, right? Setting up a call, right? That kind of thing, setting up, if you live close by, getting coffee with each other, right? And those are extremely good because that amount of time usually allows for more depth, which is wonderful. But I think what is even more or just as important these days, but maybe less emphasized, is the more frequent but less formal communications, right? Mentors, do you text your mentees, right? Mentors, do you know what social media or what communication apps are easiest to reach your mentees on, right? Because if you don't, that's something you should absolutely get to know, right? Because reaching them is half of the problem, right? And half the solution, right? So text them, something that relates to a conversation you had, right? If there's, a movie you saw that you think they would absolutely love, text them. Don't ever hesitate to pick up the phone and get in contact with your mentee, right? Because the more you do that, the more this relationship becomes an actual relationship, right? If two people meet through the Sangha, then at least initially, this relationship is just within the mentorship Sangha, right? Which is a great place to start. But for that relationship to really evolve, that person has to see you as a person in their life, both inside this context and outside the context of the Sangha, right? And that will only happen with more and more frequent communication, right? And so again, to my point, find out, right? Find out what the best way is to reach your mentee, right? Okay. So just very quickly recapping that for mentors, I know I'm almost out of time. I'm going to wrap up soon. I feel that the three principles that mentors should utilize and ask themselves about are authenticity. Am I being true to who I am? Responsiveness. What does my mentee need and how can I support them? And regularity. How do I go above and beyond to strengthen this relationship? For mentees, I've put less here because I think the onus is less on you. I think for mentees, if I could sum up in one word what you need to do, you need to be available. You need to make yourself available. You have to give your mentors a chance, right? You give them that chance and I know they will run with it. So some questions for mentees to ask yourself in terms of how you can help your mentor help you best. Ask yourself, what do I want my mentor to know about? What are my strengths, my areas for improvement, and my goals? That's always a great starting point. Generally thinking about how can my mentor help me, right? Do I need academic help? Do I need socio-emotional help, right? Do I need help with figuring out how to navigate my relationship with my parents? All those things. And then the last is, am I doing my part to keep the door open, right? Am I responding to their texts, right? So mentees, just the one word summary here is availability. Be available for your mentors, yes? So those are my points. I'm happy to share these slides with the organizers who, if they want to, can then share it with all of you. Thank you all for listening, and thank you organizers for having me.
Awesome. Thank you, Vinay. That was super right on the nose, I feel like, of a lot of the points that we all feel of like what's working for us and areas that we want to improve. So really appreciate that.
I'm thinking back to about 10-ish years ago when I was in college myself. I was lucky in that I went to college with a number of older chicks who were at the same school as me, and we all had a weekly discussion group. And even once where I was saying, like Pooja, I met Pooja when I was in college, right? And I think my answer would be, if you have a question and you think that there's someone who can help you with that question, ask, right? Because here's my own experience, right? When I had a Vedanta question, when something didn't make sense or I didn't know how to apply it, I would ask people, right? And they would tell me their thoughts and their answers. And while that may help, I still, at the end of the day, I had to figure out how it made sense for me and how to actually practice it. And that process sometimes took weeks or months or years. So I would say, don't be afraid to lean into these relationships, like lean into them more and more and more. Because even now, myself and a few other seekers, we meet every now and then it's less regular and less formal. We still are able to talk about these things so freely. So really lean into those relationships. And my last point is that not hesitating about asking questions in these relationships, whether it's mentor, mentee, friends, I actually think it actually makes the relationships more sattvic themselves, right? Because naturally, you start to talk and think more collectively about these topics as opposed to, you know, other things, right? So does that help? Does that make sense? Good. Great question.
So with that, we're going to conclude today's session. I'll chant Om once, and then we'll conclude from there. Om. Hari Om. Be well.